Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Shelby Radcliffe. I serve Willamette as the Vice President of Advancement. And as I mentioned just a few moments ago, my hotel lost power just a few minutes before we started this webinar. So that is why I'm in the dark, lit only by my fully charged laptop. But I just wanted to prepare everyone that the light may come on suddenly during this event. I'm not entirely certain what will happen. But anyway, tonight we're going to talk about the state of higher education in the United States, but in particular, how Willamette is responding to the pressures that are around us in the world of higher education, and how, in spite of all that pressure, we are becoming one of the most, if not the most, innovative leaders in the region and, dare I say, the country. We will also dig into our guest questions that you submit during this session through the Q&A feature of Zoom, and also that folks have submitted in advance. Thank you for participating in this evening's program. And let me introduce our featured guest, President Thorsett. Of course, Steve is our 20th president. He became president of Willamette University in July of 2011. He's an internationally recognized astrophysicist, but he also brings to Willamette more than 3 decades of experience as a scholar, a teacher, and an academic leader. Most of you know that Steve grew up in Salem and is the son of Karen and Grant Thorsett. And some of you may have even had Grant for a biology class while you were a student at Willamette. So let's go ahead and get started. And we're going to start with the big question. Let's talk about the state of higher education today. While the opening and closing of colleges has been a constant since the founding of Harvard almost 400 years ago, it feels to many, including me, like American higher education is at a crossroads right now. The Wall Street Journal recently noted that more than 500 four-year private nonprofit colleges closed in the last decade. So over 50 a year, I guess. And Inside Higher Ed covered a National Center for Education statistics report that highlighted that nearly 100 colleges closed in the 2023-2024 academic year. Now, those 100 colleges may have been both public and private. Nonprofit and for-profit colleges, but still, that's an alarming number. So, President Thorsett, what are we doing at Willamette to prepare not just to weather this storm, but also to thrive?
Well, thanks, Shelby, and thank you all for coming. It's great to have you here. Before I get into that very hard question, I just want to reaffirm Shelby's comment from before that, to the greatest extent possible, we want to try to make this as interactive as we can. We've done a number of these, and it's always a little bit disconcerting from this end because we don't get to see everybody's faces, and there's not a good sense for where people may have questions, hands raised, things like that. So use the chat and Q&A functions and make sure that we know what you're thinking about so that we can try to make this into as much of a conversation as we can. So Shelby, you want to start off on the really happy topic of the challenges in higher education. It's no mystery that this is a really, really difficult time in higher education for lots and lots of different reasons. I mean, we're still working our way through COVID in lots of ways, as are many other institutions, and the changes in society that came with COVID. So both the direct effects of the pandemic and the after effects of the pandemic, which are layered on top of some really deep financial challenges in higher education that have both cost dimensions and affordability dimensions. And we could get into that in more detail, I think. But also it's a moment when the demographics are changing in the United States. There's a larger and larger fraction of college age students who are not coming from families with college going traditions. So first in families, perhaps surprisingly to some, are going up in recent years, not down, just because of the particular demographics, generational demographics. And then the overall number of students is dropping. The number of college-age students is dropping. The fraction of students who are choosing to go to college is dropping for a variety of reasons, putting higher ed in a really different situation than it's been in at any time since the Second World War, which was really the last time there was a serious drop in the number of students attending college.
Mhm.
So those are all big, new, complicated challenges that are adding stress into the system in general. But as you say, I mean, people have been talking about college closures since the 19th century. I mean, there were people in the late 19th century looking around at all of the schools like Willamette that had been founded and saying that there was no future for the sector of higher education, and they were wrong in a really big way. I mean, higher education has changed certainly over the years. It has changed a great deal in the late 19th century, in the Depression years, in the World War II years, in the 1970s, and it's changing today. But I'm pretty confident that given the value of higher education, that the basic industry is strong, and we can talk about why I think Willamette's really well placed in this complicated time.
Yeah, so since I arrived in 2016, we've been doing a lot. And actually, prior to my arrival, we've been doing a lot to make Willamette more affordable to those families who don't have a college going tradition and may not have access to the resources for a full tuition. We've been doing things to increase our operational efficiency, which helps us to be more affordable. But we've also introduced some new programs and new schools into the Willamette family. Do you want to talk a little bit about any of those things?
Yeah, why don't I talk about cost and we'll get that out of the way and then move on to some other things. I mean, cost is a huge challenge in higher education. It's certainly apparent to anybody who's in college, has kids in college, grandkids in college, and it's been a real issue for a long time now. I've talked to some of you in settings like this before about why college costs so much. It's a complicated question. It comes down largely to what's called Baumol's cost disease, the same thing that has led to the relative rise in costs for legal services and dental services and for live music and other service-driven industries that don't have natural ways to improve the sort of efficiency of the use of highly educated employees. I mean, we have not gained productivity at the rate that other sectors of the economy have. And that's really at the heart of a lot of what looks like the rise of college costs since the 1950s. But there are other issues. I mean, certainly increased expectations of students and families for both the breadth of programs that we offer and also the kinds of support services that we offer. And a lot of that's really great. It makes the kind of services we have for students who might have physical disabilities or have other issues that would have limited their access to higher education at an earlier time are much greater now. Our doors are open much wider, and that's great, but it's also expensive. And then the student support services that are expected are quite a bit higher than they were a generation or especially two generations ago. So all of those things drive cost. I mean, the thing that Willamette's really been focused, I mean, we've been focused on this for a long time in a bunch of different directions. First, it's really important to the university that we provide access to the most qualified students out there who we believe are going to be the leaders of tomorrow for the Pacific Northwest and the world. And really keeping the door open as wide as we can has been a priority. And so that means keeping the cost of college as low as we can, which means being very rigorous about cost control, making sure that every dollar we spend is focused on our core mission and not allowing the kind of sort of spending creep that is so easy in big complex organizations like this. So if you look at the cost of Willamette, it is lower today in real terms. It's significantly lower in real terms than the day I arrived 14 years ago. it may be lower in dollar terms for the median student now. We have signaled that by reducing our list price. So our tuition at Willamette now is 20% lower than it is at our real Northwest peers like Whitman and Lewis and Clark and UPS. And we've put more substance behind it by really focusing on financial aid. And we can talk about that in great length too later. I mean, the importance of the way that the Willamette community has stepped up to support scholarship aid has been just critical to keeping the true cost of a Willamette education down for our students. But some of that is really difficult trade-offs, and
Yeah.
some of that means not doing things that some students would like. I mean, we would love to have fancy residence halls with suites and single bedrooms off the suites, and certainly some other institutions have chosen to do that. But you look at a school like Chapman in California is $7,000 more per student per year just for housing in order to provide that kind of housing. And so our decision that we really need to focus on our faculty and our core educational mission means deciding that we're not going to be charging students for those kind of amenities that have driven the cost of higher education at some of our East Coast competitors really close to six figures a year.
Yes, yes. One of the good outcomes of this is the work is really paying off. And according to the New York Times, their College Access Index lists us as the most socioeconomically diverse selective college or university in the Northwest. And so we're really proud of that. You will not be surprised, Steve, that the first question we have from our live audience is about the recent election and the conversations around the Department of Education, and in particular, interest by our president-elect in some institutions of higher education. So the question is, does that worry you? And if not, why not? And if yes, how exactly does it worry you?
I don't have any specific worries at this point. I think, one of the things driving costs in higher education has been the increased regulatory compliance costs. When I was in college in the mid-1980s, iPads, which was the federal data collection for colleges, was an optional thing that colleges could participate if they want. Today, every one of us is required to participate in iPads in order to give federal financial aid, and it's a 300-page questionnaire that gets filled out every year. Yesterday I got a letter from the department with 28 new requirements around implementation of the Violence Against Women Act, which is a really important act, but adds a lot of complexity. And so one of the things, I've been doing this through a number of presidential transitions now. And so in addition to the complexity of compliance, the complexity of change with each new administration, and it's not necessarily even partisan. The Obama administration had some diametrically opposed requirements to the Biden administration. But every time we have change, it adds cost and complexity. I think, there are particular things that we're tracking. Congress has been working pretty slowly but assiduously on improving the Pell Grant program in recent years. They are a large fraction of bipartisan supporters in Congress have been committed to doubling the Pell Grant. And that's been moving forward, and that's great. And I don't have real concerns that funding is going away. I do know that there's going to be a different set of priorities, and whether they're able to continue that is not so clear. But on the flip side, there is serious talk of eliminating federal work study and repurposing those funds for other things. And, work study is a really important part of the experiential um, part of many of our students' education. I mean, I certainly did a number of work study jobs in college, tutoring jobs, computer jobs in the admissions department, and other things, and that was all really important. And so we're tracking those kind of changes and thinking about them. I think some of the more dramatic things that the incoming president has talked about, stripping endowments from colleges if they don't do things relating to EDI that are consistent. I don't think that any of that is significant concern, really. I think a lot of it was signaling.
You don't think it will happen? Is that what you mean?
I think it will not happen in the way that people are afraid it will happen, and I don't think that Willamette is in a position to be particularly concerned about that. I mean, we're very thoughtful on those issues. So
Right. Well, and our endowment, of course, we're proud of our healthy endowment, but it is not the size of the endowment that attracts these kinds of conversations. We don't have a B at the beginning of our endowment number.
no,
So,
we are not subject to federal endowment tax, for example.
right. Yeah.
Reed is the only college in Oregon that is. So
Yeah. So you mentioned the way student jobs are an important part of students' discernment and career path, and really part of their co-curricular experience. And one of the criticisms of higher education is related to how we prepare students for life after college. And of course, we have this saying that we use all the time that we're preparing students to turn knowledge into action. But during your tenure, we've really made that concrete by investing in our career development program. We've expanded it, over doubled the number of people across all of the colleges who work with students on discernment, on internships, on job searching, and on graduate school searching as well. Can you talk a little bit about why you see that's important and how we think about helping students who have a liberal arts education, whether it's at the undergraduate level or the graduate level, how we help them to translate that for employers and future employers?
yeah, and this sort of goes back to your first question too about the general state of higher education and the rising level of public concern about the value of higher education is largely tied to that question of how institutions like Willamette are preparing students for the job related pieces of our mission, which is only part of what we're trying to do, but it's a very important part. And I think it's been a little bit tricky for those of us in liberal arts colleges and universities like Willamette, because we know that a liberal education is the best sort of fundamental set of capacity building approaches that are going to support students not just in the first job that they get after Willamette, but in a set of careers. And we can point to hundreds of years now of very successful alumni who have built really interesting careers out in the world, business careers, social careers, political careers, on the basis of a Willamette education. And we have a lot of confidence that that will continue to be true going forward. But I think it's really important that we not fall into the trap of assuming that everybody else understands that. And in particular, as we think about this much more socioeconomically diverse set of students who we hope to serve and to a very real extent are serving now than a generation or two ago, and first generation students who don't have the same sort of family experience of watching how college education translates into opportunities later. We have to make some of that more explicit. And I think helping students benefit both from the broad capacities developed in a liberal education and from the clarity of a path into a career or profession is really important. And so, as you say, we've spent a lot of time thinking about the way our programs are structured, the way our career services are structured, the way that we hand off students between academic advising and career advising, the way that we involve alumni in talking with students about career opportunities. All of those have been really important. And we've also, we are at our heart a liberal arts college, but professional education is really important at Willamette as well. It always has been. and really reorienting the university a little more explicitly to be outward facing in the sense that we're paying attention to the needs of our region, especially the needs of the world more broadly, but especially how we can better prepare students to serve the needs of Oregon and Washington and strengthen the communication between faculty and employers to understand those and to translate that into our professional offerings so that our students have a clearer path out into the world. I mean, you see that, I mean, really, we haven't talked about Pacific Northwest College of Art. Of course, one of the big changes at Willamette recently has been the merger of one of the West's great art and design schools into the university. And one of the things that has been really fun for me has been to learn how a modern art and design school thinks of itself as a professional training program and thinks about how you prepare students to work at Nike or to work at Columbia Sportswear or to work at Wieden and Kennedy and this idea that art schools are some sort of removed from the world
Yeah.
escapes, it couldn't be further from the truth. And I think the whole university has learned a lot about how to build connections and to support workforce development by learning from our partners at PNCA.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's fun to see how they integrate things into their classes that are actual assignments for clients, for real clients, in their design classes, in their animation classes, in their illustration classes, and even in their more traditional classes like drawing and painting. We have a totally different kind of question from an alum who lives in Fargo, North Dakota, so doesn't get to come to campus as often. But noted that the last time he was on campus, it felt like some of the maintenance that used to happen was not happening. And but is curious about some of the things that we're doing that are either to improve our efficiency in maintaining the campus or to do cost saving with energy, or just what are some of the things we've implemented that might be visible to our visitors. I know our boiler
Yeah,
project is really visible to our visitors,
yeah,
but it's
yeah.
certainly felt by our visitors.
I mean, we actually have been making really good progress on the deferred maintenance list, but it is almost by definition the invisible deferred maintenance that we've been working on. I mean, depending on when you last visited campus, especially if you visited in the summer, there have been some experiments around water use I mean, you see that in a number of different places around Salem with different organizations that are trying to think about how to maintain, especially large expanses of grass in the dry Oregon summer in a more environmentally sensible way. And I think that for a couple of years, we probably went a little bit too far on some of that. And I think we found now a better balance around the sort of summer greenery
Right.
piece of the campus, which was maybe the most evident change. I mean, as Shelby says, we've been the big project, which only excites a very few of us, is the replacement of the entire boiler plant for the central campus, which is a more than $10 million project, replacing what had been a 70-year-old boiler system, which was probably, I would guess, some of the tunnels that it was piping steam through to all of the central campus buildings dated to the 19th century. You could walk campus on a snowy day and see where all those tunnels were by where the snow was melted because there was so much heat loss in the old-fashioned steam distribution. And so we're moving to a modern, I mean, it was maintainable in the sense that it was so old that all the pieces could be machined in a machine shop. It didn't have any complicated electronics in it, but still it was an end of life system, and replacing that and moving to a modular modern system is a huge energy savings going forward. It's a sort of 2.5 year project, and we're a little more than a year and a half into it. So this summer should be the end of that project. And similarly, there's a big light replacement project at the moment, moving to energy efficient lights for the same reason, which is, I mean, there are a lot of lights on campus. It's a couple $1 million project. So there have been some really big projects like that, and we've been doing a good job on catching up on roof projects and all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of maintenance work going on. All the restrooms in the dorms have been upgraded. There's a window project still to be done in one of the dorms, but anyway, we're ticking our way through the list and feeling pretty good about it.
I would like there to be a lighting project in my hotel room right now.
Yep.
Just saying. So one of our guests is asking about the role of higher education in civic education, especially in light of the fact that civics does not seem to be part of the core curriculum at a lot of our public schools anymore, and also that not all students are going to public schools. So what do you think about civic education in a liberal arts core curriculum?
Well, especially at the higher education level, there are lots of different components to thinking about civic
Yeah.
education. I mean, educating citizens is a really, really important part of our mission. And if you look at the landscape of schools like us, there's a reason that all of these schools were founded in the early and mid 19th century. We had a brand new democracy, which needed to have educated citizens participating in it. And a big piece of the driving force for the huge 19th century expansion of higher education was the recognition that this was part of being a democracy. And I think we've always taken that seriously, and you can see that in the number of our alumni who have gone into public service. And it continues to be a real area of curricular distinction for us. We've had a group of faculty and others working for the last year on one of the big planks in our strategic plan, which is strengthening democratic institutions and really identifying how Willamette can amplify its distinctive advantages in these programs. So they've been inventorying our current resources and thinking a lot about curricular development there. And of course, the Atkinson School, I mean, one of the unique things about the Willamette MBA is that it is a dual accredited program that is accredited both by the public management accreditors and the business accreditors, in part because it is focused on educating managers for government and not-for-profits as well as business. So you see that, and of course, public law is one of the real distinctive strengths of Willamette's law school. So you see that sort of running through a lot of the way Willamette thinks about how it positions itself. But you also, and PPLE, politics, policy, law, and ethics, which is the sort of our modern approach to a government degree, is one of the biggest majors on campus.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, these programs pull in a lot of students. The trick is trying to figure out how to reach all students, right? You want this to be a learning objective of the university, not just a learning objective of individual majors or individual graduate degree programs. And so thinking about how we help develop, again, the broad capacities students need to be successful in the duties of citizenship is an important goal of the institution. So we've had some projects. The sort of highest profile one in recent years has been what's called the Conversation Project, which is a seminar style class. I mean, it brings together a relatively small number of students in working through this question of how do you have difficult conversations? How do you have conversations with people you disagree with that move towards a constructive understanding, at least, if not agreement? And in the first semester, they largely focus on working with the other people on campus, sort of helping develop programming to support those kind of conversations on campus. And then in the second semester of that program, they partner with community organizations that have similar challenges around hard conversations and work to build capacity in those organizations as a way of deepening their own understanding of how to build capacity in whatever organizations they're going to go out and work in after they leave Willamette. So, I mean, we're really proud of what we've learned in doing that. I wouldn't want to argue that we are yet reaching all of our students in that work at the level we would like to, but it's a center of real activity and interest at Willamette at the moment.
Yeah, and one of the ways we have to be educated citizens is learn to interpret information and data. And our data science program is growing by leaps and bounds. And even our students who are not majoring in data science are taking data science classes. I think I heard our dean of the College of, or the School of Computing and Information Sciences said we had 300 students in the fall semester this year enrolled in a data science class at the undergraduate level. So that's a huge percentage of our students for one semester, right? So will you talk a little bit about that new school and why it evolved and how excited we are about what's happening there?
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to this question of being an outward-looking institution and thinking about what the needs of the region are, and really understanding that I mean, computer science, data science are so important, not just in
Right.
traditional engineering fields, but very broadly. And Willamette had some strengths. Certainly, we had strengths in business analytics in the Atkinson School. We had the Quad Center, which was really focused on statistics and the social sciences. We had interest in bioinformatics. So that, there were pockets of people, and we had a computer science department, which was one of the oldest computer science departments in our region. I worked in computer camps at Willamette in 1978. Back before most people had ever touched a computer, we were teaching high school students about computers at Willamette. So we had been in the field for a long time, but it was a small and somewhat old-fashioned department. And so sort of looking at the needs of the region, looking at the sort of capacities that we had, we realized that we really had an opportunity to bring these resources together from around the university and build what you might think of as an interdisciplinary data science program. So, a big research university would build a bioinformatics program, and they'd build a statistics program in their social sciences division. And, each discipline has its own approach. We decided we were going to go a different direction and brought faculty from the management school and the arts and sciences college initially together. There's some law participation, and put together first what we called a committee of studies to think about how to develop programming, and then that eventually spun off into a school. But really focused on, again, this liberal arts approach to both computer science and data science, and increasingly information science, in thinking about how do we build broad capacities. We're not educating students in how do you use R, or how do you use Python, or whatever the tool of the day might be. They learn that along the way, but our purpose is to develop the broad capacities so that whatever field they're going into, which will probably change frequently in their career, given the rate the field is changing. The tools will change through the career, but they need to know the concepts behind those in a way that they can continue to evolve. And what we're finding is, it's a very popular program. It's the master's program is now the top ranked master's program in data science in the Pacific Northwest. We were one of the first movers in that field, which gave us a head start. I think we have both the largest and the most diverse faculty in those fields and at any private university in the Northwest. Including some with engineering schools. It means we have capacity at the undergraduate level to support a really broad range of students taking courses in those fields. Together, data and computer science, I think, is our third largest major now. And our graduates are going off and doing these really interesting things. In the first class, we have students who've gone off to work as analysts for sporting teams. We have one who went to work for the Marion County District Attorney, working on justice-related issues with using data to bring a rigorous lens to some of those questions. We have students who are going into the very typical big data kind of fields. but seeing the breadth of of sort of engagement and the fun. And it is, I mean, we've been growing very fast. Are you still there, Shelby?
I am. Are you? I don't know if our guests, you were breaking up, but I'm not sure if it was on my end or not. Can you hear me
Yep.
now?
Yep. You're frozen, but I can hear you.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Well, as we can see, the hotel lights
I
have still
can,
not come
yes.
on. It is not just our hotel, it is the entire block, as far as I can tell. But anyway, well, speaking of things we've done, the merger, of course, with PNCA introduced the BFA and the MFA to the family of degree offerings that we have. And it introduced a bigger footprint in Portland for us. One of our pre-submitted questions was about how that merger is going. Was it financially successful? Has it been academically and culturally successful? And what do you see next happening there?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very good move for the university in lots of different ways. I think one of the things to understand about the merger is that it was a very slow process, and it goes back to some of the regulatory things. But the merger was not officially finished until last spring. And until it was finished, we were really limited in our ability to make changes. We were in provisional accreditation stayed with the merger until March or something last year. So there hasn't been as much of the curricular work done as one might expect at this point, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. There's a lot of activity going on with the faculty at the moment. What did happen right away was a real sort of restructuring of the administration across the two institutions. And so, I mean, the there are a lot of things in higher education that scale in cost with the size of the school, but there are also a lot of things that don't. You have to have one registrar, no matter how many students you have. You have to have a vice president of student affairs. You need one president, no matter how many students you have. And it's really hard for a school like PNCA with 500 students or 600 students to remain sustainable. And you see a lot of the closures that Shelby mentioned at the top are closures of schools that were under 1,000 students. And in fact, quite a few, some really distinguished art schools have closed in recent years. And so the first real victory was just sustaining PNCA. I mean, PNCA as part of Willamette, eliminating the duplicated overhead is a going concern that contributes, like all of our other schools, to the general central costs of running the institution. So it is a financially stable school, and it is able to provide to its students a lot of services that a school of 500 students wasn't able to do on its own. And so the health of the art school is much higher now. And that has advantages for the rest of the institution too. The rest of the institution is a lot bigger, and so the savings are spread out around in many more places. It's not as large an obvious impact, but the impact is there for them as well. I think I mean, I already mentioned one example of the way that PNCA's engagement with the business community in Portland and thinking about professional career development has been important. Those relationships that came in, and the just addition of a group of people who had thought differently about some of these problems has been really useful as the institution thinks about its own structure. And it, I mean, it has also given us a nucleus for a different way of thinking about our presence in Portland. And so the move of Willamette to consolidate our master's programs in Portland at what is usually called the Eco Trust building, about 2 blocks away from PNCA, has given us efficiencies again, just from geographic location, but also has and sort of cross use of space between the two programs, but also has let us start to think about things like, well, how does data visualization and data design, which are interests that were pre-existing in PNCA, connect with data science and allow us to think about expanding our offerings there. I think some other low-hanging fruit can be connected more closely, and which I think is going to give PNCA a real competitive advantage in its competition group. You know, schools like
Right.
Savannah and RISD and the national arts schools that it competes against.
Yeah.
So I think that's all really interesting, but work on joint degree programs and the like is really just getting underway. It's the next couple of years. We'll see some
It'll be
changes.
exciting to see what happens. We have a
Mm.
question we've never been asked on one of these forums. And maybe we should both answer it, but an alum who is wondering, what are the top three reasons that undergraduates choose Willamette in Salem? So they're choosing the what we typically call the liberal arts college in Salem. What are the top three reasons from your perspective? Or do you want me to go first? You might be having technical
Um,
difficulty.
well, first, if I don't know whether the internet connection problem is at your end or my end.
I
If
think it's at your
Tiffany or
end.
somebody else can signal, I can find
Yeah,
another. I can.
I think it's at your
Okay,
end.
I'm going to try to switch over to hotspotting. So
Okay, and I'm going to answer that question
if I drop
first.
off, I'll be right back.
Great. Um, my answer to that question is I think the reasons are it's very hard to pick a top three. I get to go to Bearcat Day receptions that we have for parents while their students are experiencing campus, and Um, students are comparing and deciding between vastly different kinds of institutions. They are looking at large state institutions, large private institutions, small liberal arts colleges. They are exploring a lot of different options. They're looking at urban schools and rural schools. And oftentimes they are not making their decision until the actual day, May 1st, of the deadline. I think when I talk to students who have chosen us, many of them cite that the smaller classroom, the attention from faculty, the desire to really dig into their academic experience is a high priority for them. And that is why schools like Willamette got on their list. And then many of them talk about what it felt like to come on campus. We have a really high yield from students who visit campus, so we make that a priority. And when they come to campus, they feel like they can belong at Willamette. And so that is definitely a top reason for sure. And then I know that some students are choosing us because they want to go to school in the Pacific Northwest. And of course, we think we're the best school in the Pacific Northwest. So that makes sense that they would choose us. But so, Steve, I don't know if you heard my what I was saying, but do you have your sense of the top three reasons students choose
I
Willamette?
may have missed your first one. What was your first
Well,
one?
I just talked about, I started with the fact that at Bearcat Days and the parent receptions that
Yeah,
students are looking at, they're looking, the same
yeah,
student could be looking at a huge institution and then small institutions like Willamette. So they often don't know until the very last minute why they're choosing us. But I think the faculty connection and the small classroom and the chance to really dig into their academics comes through
right.
as a theme for
And
sure.
yeah, and I think all of those are really important. I mean, every student has a different
Yeah.
decision matrix, and that's one of the things that makes enrollment and admission such an interesting
If we could answer that question, that's the,
um, I mean, I do think, I mean, we do have a significant number of students who choose us because of cost. They can afford us, and they may not be able to afford one of the schools whose tuition is 20% higher than us. But it isn't just that. It is, you know, we've been very thoughtful about how to combine liberal arts and professional degrees, and the joint degree pathways are really interesting to a lot of students. The 3-2 MBA pathway, the sort of 3-1.5 Master of Science in Data Science or Computer Science pathways, the 3-3 Law pathway, which don't just save money, they save both a year of time and the uncertainty that comes with needing to connect between undergraduate and graduate somewhere else. And I think those, for a lot of our students, those are really interesting options. And particularly, in our peer group, we are the only school that has a AACSB accredited management program. If you want to study business, um, and you want to be in an environment, a liberal arts environment, and get all of the benefits that come from the general education approach and the liberal arts and so on. Your choice is to go to an unaccredited program like Linfield has, or a really limited program like the minor in entrepreneurship that Lewis and Clark is trying to put together. Or you come to Willamette and you have the same faculty who are teaching in the top ranked MBA program in Oregon are teaching in a fully accredited undergraduate program, which is integrated in the liberal arts in a way that you can't get at Oregon State, say, where doing a business degree means doing a gen ed program in the business school and all the rest. So it's a unique opportunity. And you have some of the same dynamics for students who are interested in fields like computer science and data science, that it's just there's a different value to doing it in a liberal arts environment than doing it in an engineering school.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do that, there's no other place in the Pacific Northwest that can compete with us
Yeah.
for quality. And so there are a lot of students who are making those kind of decisions. And then, there are students, quarter of our students still do varsity athletics. A lot of students are coming because they resonate with a coach, they resonate with a team, they want to be on one of the top ranked triathlon, NCAA triathlon programs in the country. We got fourth this year, fifth last year, so we're moving up. But those kind of sort of special cases, or theater. I mean, theater is a really really important and really high quality program for students who want to, again, they may want to major in English or in chemistry, but they want to be in an environment where they can do serious high quality musical theater, for example, and they can do that. That's why oh, I'm blanking. This is embarrassing. Our Nobel Prize winner
Oh my gosh.
in economics.
Yes, I know, and I'm not going to remember.
But he talks about why he came in the 1960s, and it was because Willamette was a place that he could do economics in a serious way, and he could act in Annie Get Your Gun, Annie Get Your Gun, and play on the football team.
Yep.
And being able to do all of those things brought him to us. So
I think
Dale Mortensen.
There you go.
Why I was blanking. First name.
One of our last questions due to time is a question that we did not plant, I promise. What do you see as the most critical challenge other than funding currently facing Willamette, and how can alumni and parents help?
I mean, so critical is a complicated word. I mean, I think. I mean, I think all of the most important challenge for all of higher education is the one we started on. It's cost. It is trying to figure out how we can hold down costs and deliver the kind of high quality education that we're proud of. And it's what a lot of us spend a lot of our time working on. And there are sort of obvious ways that that our alumni and friends have been really important in helping us with that. And maybe I'll ask you a question about that in just a second. So there's a sense in which that's the most important question, and that it's what I think a lot of us spend a lot of our time working on. It's hard work. It's been hard work for generations. I mean, people have been working on this for a long time, and it will be hard work for generations. It's not a problem we're going to solve. It's a problem that the next president and the president after that will still be trying to solve, because it's just, it's always going to be hard. The thing that I would pick, though, that in some ways is a more interesting challenge is that I mean, Willamette continues to be, in some ways, the best kept secret in the Willamette Valley, right? I mean, we are a relatively small school outside the main urban areas of the state, a long ways away from the main media markets on the East Coast. We are not nearly as well known as we ought to be, and the changes that Willamette has made in the last 10 or 20 years, I think, are not widely known, even among our alumni body, much less in the broader world. I mean, reputations of higher education institutions are one of the slowest and hardest things to change because the stories are so widely distributed about what the institution was like a generation or two ago. And so getting past that and talking about what the modern Willamette looks like is really hard work. And I think it's one of the places where our engaged alumni can be most important, is people who have taken the time and done the work to learn through events like this, reading the alumni magazine, all of the other communications about what's happening at Willamette, and then talk with other alumni, with parents of rising high school seniors, with business people who are hiring Willamette people who may not know that we have the best and largest data science program in Portland. I would guess there are a lot of people in Portland who don't know that. And just being able to be an advocate for the institution.
Going back to why people choose Willamette, so many times you hear the story of my high school teacher, someone from my church or synagogue, someone they knew about Willamette and they suggested that I look at the school. The word of mouth part of our admissions pipeline is really, really important. And so I think that's definitely true. So we're running up against the end of our time. And I know we wanted to share with our guests a little bit about some of the work that we've been doing in the advancement program.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you that. So,
yes. So what have I been up to?
your turn to say a little bit about what you've been up to.
So many of our folks online may not realize that since 2017, we've actually been in the midst of an effort to raise $150 million over a 7-year period. And when that started, we were a smaller institution by 2 different schools, and we were aiming to be bigger and broader and bolder. And we wanted to make sure we were able to support that expansion of our programs, but also, most importantly, to bring curious, talented, and dedicated students to Willamette and provide them with a transformative education. And so we have focused largely on raising money for financial aid and other projects. And we are very pleased to announce that we surpassed our goal, and we actually have raised $160 million. If you want me to be precise, $160,12,467. And that 11,641 people participated in this. So many of the folks online are probably some of our donors. That is a huge chunk of our alumni population, and we're also including parents and grandparents and friends of the institution in those numbers. We also had more volunteers than ever before, with over 2,000 unique volunteers across that time frame, and we significantly raised the annual fund from 1.7 to 2.8 million a year. So we have a little video to share with our community online, and I think it should start playing soon. And after the video, we'll wrap up and say goodnight, but we hope you'll enjoy this story of what we've been doing and what you all have helped us do.
I'm a firm believer that Willamette is the premier liberal arts institution here in the Northwest.
I believe this is a great institution, a consequential institution.
It was founded, of course, in 1842, 17 years before the state of Oregon. It is part of Oregon's DNA.
There are just so few institutions like Willamette in the greater Northwest region.
Willamette is an empowering place, very empowering. The education was such that I never was afraid that I couldn't learn something or understand something.
The environment that we have in the classroom is very energetic, very engaged.
Faculty themselves are really keen to see that students are well served and are supported.
Willamette is doing different things than a lot of schools. It's not just digging into its history and trying to survive. It's really innovating and staying relevant and meaningful.
That's really only possible with alumni support and strong alumni engagement.
We set a goal to raise $150 million for the university. Our alumni and friends showed up in force.
The $160 million that have been raised in this last 7-year period at Willamette has been transformative, providing access to students and hiring new faculty.
We've grown in the number of students, in the kinds of programs we offer.
We've added a new college with the Pacific Northwest College of Art. We've added a new graduate school with the School of Computing and Information Sciences.
We have expanded our thinking about the Willamette Forest at Xena.
We've added new business majors at the undergraduate level.
They really have hired world-class faculty members.
We have funds to help them research, funds to help them innovate, funds to help them design a new course.
We redefined what Willamette University is and can be.
Today, Willamette consists of 2 full-scale undergraduate colleges, one in Salem, one in Portland, 4 graduate schools. We've been able to integrate across the arts and sciences and the professions, across undergraduate and graduate instruction in ways almost nobody else is doing today.
The kinds of problems we're dealing with as a globe and a culture these days require that people be able to work across boundaries and be able to approach questions in a more complicated and effective way.
Willamette students like to be double majors and double minors, and actually that informs all the work that they're doing.
I'm able to take classes from different fields. Faculty really encourage the mixing of the disciplines.
I want to know more so I can understand what I can do.
Our School of Computer and Information Sciences, as an example, is really looking at how computing science, data science is applied in a wide range of disciplines.
In this very data-saturated age, it's really good to be able to understand the context and limitations of data.
We also have a cross-disciplinary approach to public health.
This is a really terrific place to offer a public health program because of its multidisciplinary nature.
Students will come out with a really broad view of healthcare and the health system and moving good health forward.
We're only beginning to scratch the surface at Willamette at what can be done as we integrate the different pieces of the university into a modern 21st century education.
We're biased, but we believe we offer the best education for leaders. And so we want the smartest, most creative, most innovative students to come here. It's just a fact that not all of those students come from families who can afford education.
I think the most important thing we were looking to do is to open the doors to Willamette to talented, engaged students from all walks of life.
If a kid goes and looks at Willamette and thinks, this is where I belong, this is my fit, we want to be sure that they can go to Willamette.
I'm so appreciative of the people who I've never met who make it possible for students like me to come here.
It's really helped a lot of students, including myself, to be able to access all these different programs that wouldn't have otherwise been available.
Getting these scholarships and the financial aid meant that I could finally go to art school, start chasing these dreams that I've had since I was a kid.
Financial aid hasn't been the only way that they've supported me.
Finding ways that we can not only bring students to Willamette, but to support them so that they can thrive is so valuable, so important.
We had donors who wanted to help students buy books, to help students fly home if a parent was ill, to help with tuition. It was amazing.
We have donors who have been supporting students' mental health support on campus.
When we invest in students, they invest in the world.
They go on to be the smartest, most innovative leaders in the region and beyond.
That's what is so impressive about Willamette, is that for nearly 200 years, it has produced men and women who want to make a difference for their community.
So many leaders in the Capitol right across the street are from Willamette.
I look around and you can tell who's going to run for city council or be on the Oregon Supreme Court. Those seeds are here.
Think of the motto, not unto ourselves alone are we born. That's the core ethos of Willamette.
It is absolutely the reason students come here. It is a value they leave with. And it is the through line between generations. We have alums who graduated 70 years ago who tear up when they talk about the motto.
We are just so grateful for the way that this community has come together.
The family of donors has expanded dramatically during this period of time. The family of volunteers has expanded dramatically during this period of time.
It's a testament to the types of people that Willamette has turned out over the decades.
It is so wonderful to see the alumni community come together and rise to this occasion.
There was a lot of people that were energized and responsive to make this happen. I think it should make everybody who's involved in any way feel pretty proud.
I think the things we're doing now will set Willamette up to be thriving in a way that we can't even imagine.
So that Willamette can provide the same wonderful experiences to the next generation of students that it provided to you and I.
I'm a great example of a life that was changed because of Willamette.
My time at Willamette provided a strong foundation for everything that I've become today.
I was able to ask questions about who I am, where I come from, my identity.
My time at Willamette was spent grooming me to be an advocate, a champion for causes.
Professors took me under their wing and believed in my potential.
They lit the fire in me that hasn't been extinguished since.
As long as Willamette continues to honor that motto of ours, not unto ourselves alone are we born, I think Willamette's future is bright.
Thank you, everyone, for letting us brag a little bit about the success of the last 7 years. And thank you for many of you who participated in this effort. We really, truly couldn't do it without you. Thank you also for participating this evening. It's delightful for us to connect with you over the airwaves, even though I am still in the dark. I'm glad that the technology worked to keep us connected, and we look forward to seeing you online again and in person. Please don't hesitate to email us with additional questions at alumni@willamette.edu. Steve, do you have a last word?
Just thanks again for all the ways that you support Willamette and for being here this evening. It's a lot of fun.
Have a great night, everyone.